Thank you, ma'am. Every thought we produce, anything we say, any action we do, bears our signature. I request Mr. Krishnamurthy Krishnaprasad Sir, Digital Nomad Ventures, Sri Lanka, to deliver his valuable speech on strategies of effective communication.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Firstly, what I would like to say is initially this session was scheduled for Dr. Veeraman to do, but due to unavoidable and personal reasons, he could not attend. So I was given the opportunity to take up this discussion, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And I was informed on short notice, so due to the communication skills I had, I was able to quickly prepare for this discussion. So most of the points by the earlier introducers and speakers were covered in summary, were covered in short. Okay, so we'll be elaborating in more detail as to why strategic, effective communication is important for your life, for your academic life, and for your working life, and most importantly for your family life. Communication is a key. I mean, it's a bridge which connects people, and if we learn to properly, effectively, and communicate in a correct way, we'll be faced with less social issues and problems. When we say social issues, it can be related to work and home and all of that. So not many people, unfortunately, are not trained, firstly, at their home background or even their school background or working background on how to communicate effectively. Now, any discipline, doesn't matter which discipline you're going for, it can be medicine, arts, engineering, scientist, all of that, even a sportsman. Your communication skills will differentiate you from the rest of the crowd. Because a person who can communicate will carry a personality. He'll have a following because he expresses himself. Versus a person, he might be good in his job, but if he does not communicate properly, then people will not recognize that person as much because that person cannot express himself. So communication is a vital skill in all stages of life. So you must really give it a lot of importance. Okay, there are a lot of communication strategies. So in this discussion, we'll look at about 10 strategies and see as to how this can really help you out in your career. The first most important aspect of communication is your first impression. Now, first impression counts a lot because if you don't, let's say, impress the person on your first meeting, it can be with a good hello or a good morning, and the way you dress, the way you look, all that adds to your first impression. Because the image what you offer, or your image speaks 1,000 words. Even without you speaking, your body language, how you dress, how you look, how you talk, how you start a conversation, all that will create an impression in the other person, that is the receiver who you are trying to communicate with. So the first impression, even though you don't have to verbally talk, you have to really give a proper, a look in your first impression. The way you dress, your haircut, the way you look, your voice, everything, all has to be properly trimmed and nice. Okay, that's the first thing. Then after that, the communication tools you use. Also, with the recent current technology, currently we are using communication tools. I'm using a communication tool. A lot of tools involved here. When I say communication tool, it's not just Zoom or Google Meet, like we are having this discussion now. Firstly, the communication tool starts with my machine, my laptop, then the internet connection, then the software, Zoom, and plus from your end, you're having a projector, you're having a big screen, and I can see a massive audience auditorium in my Google Meet view. So all of that are aspects of communication tools. and technology has made this possible. In the past, communication before technology came in was mostly physical, or people to write letters. Okay, it was very, very limited. So the world was a big place where to get information, share information, all of that was a real challenge. But after, let's say, the 1950s or 60s, communication technology started coming in, mainly after the telephone was invented by Graham Bell some 150 years ago. So from that point onwards, communication became a key tool in all aspects of education, business, social life, politics, everything. Communication, media is very powerful. Even in Sri Lanka, India, media is very powerful. The media is powerful, the news channels, all of that, and social media, all of that, because it's all about communication. End of the day, all of us are communicating with one another at all times. So most of you all, I'm sure, would have mobile phones, smartphones, and you're all on WhatsApp. So always chatting with your family and friends. Now, without checking your WhatsApp message, probably every 15-20 minutes, it's a trend now, it's a norm. If you don't check your messages on WhatsApp every, let's say, even half an hour, then it's like a abnormal situation. So communication tools play a vital role in how we live our lives and how we look to take our lives forward. Okay, and currently, the present age, we tend to communicate with a lot of people. Now, in the earlier days, you only communicate with the people you know. That is before technology. Now, for example, take Facebook. You might have 5,000 friends, but actually only 20 people might be actually friends in your Facebook friends. The balance will be just connections, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of that, or even Instagram. So you don't know them, but you're communicating with them. You're liking. Even if you like a post, even if you make a comment on a post, you're engaging a communication there. So the communication has become so broad where you communicate with whoever comes in touch with you, especially in the virtual world, in the e-commerce, in the Internet of Things. Communication plays a major part. Google is all about communication. If you have to put it in brief. Now, when you go and type something in Google, when you search for any information, you're communicating with Google to get that information for you. So again, that's also communication. So communication, it goes beyond just the verbal or even the written aspect. You're communicating with softwares, you're communicating with artificial intelligence, and that's responding to you. That is one good example is Google search. Okay, so that becomes so advanced, and probably another 5 to 10 years, communication will go to the next level. We don't know what's in store, but it actually shapes the tools of communication shape the way we live our lives and the way we plan and take our life forward. Communication is such a powerful tool in our lives. Okay, then in a communication process, let us look at a brief understanding. Okay, there are two people involved. Logically, unless you're in a conference call or a conference discussion or a group discussion on WhatsApp, in a normal, in a theoretical way, there are two people involved, a sender and a receiver. Okay, so when a sender sends a message, you expect the receiver to receive that message without any distortion, or we call it outside noise. Okay, at most times, when a person gives a message, only 15 to 20% of the actual message goes to the receiver. Because of external disturbances. Okay, that's always a challenge, especially verbal communication. You would have seen it in a lot of scientific studies and all of that. If you can do your research, you'll find out, especially if one message is passed on to 5 or 6 people, from one person to another, that message, when it comes to the final person, it's sometimes a total different message. So a lot of studies have been done on that, and it has been proven. But nowadays, with the technology, for example, you type a WhatsApp message or an email, it's there, it's direct. So you're giving a clear, direct message. So that's very important when you're communicating. But in verbal, one-to-one, depends if you're what type of, let's say, for example, if you're asking a question, it can be direct, and you can get a clear answer for that. But if you give me a speech like what I'm doing, for example, I talk for 45 minutes or 1 hour here, probably you remember only 10% of what I said. Most of the information will go in and out, flash out. I mean, that's the way the listening aspect of the human mind works. So you'll only grasp the key points. That is only if you're listening to what I say. That is active listening. We'll come to that point as well. So when you're only clearly opening your mind and listening to the speaker, you will digest or absorb the points or the information that he wants to give. Okay, then in your communication strategy, for example, even in your classroom or since you're university students, I'm sure y'all are learning in an open environment. When I say open environment, all students are encouraged to communicate openly. That is, express themselves freely. They have a question to ask a lecturer, they can stand up and openly ask. They want to communicate any questions or queries with their friends, share their knowledge, or learn from your own colleagues. That was your openly, you should be willing to talk and ask. So you have to come out of that timid nature, which most of us, especially our South Asian communities, due to various external factors, we're brought up in a timid way where we fail to communicate properly at most times. So most of us try to communicate with body language, especially facial expressions, rather than verbal expressions. So people with expression communicating in with let's say with only body language will not give you accurate picture of what that person is saying. So always use both a good mixture of verbal and non-verbal communication skills. So we look at the non-verbal aspect as well, which is very, very powerful, because subconsciously certain verbal gestures, even if you're not, nobody's taught you those gestures, every person understands as a human being, immaterial if he's educated or uneducated, he understands a gesture. For example, if someone is talking, okay, if someone is talking from his heart, from his mind, with emotion, people will feel. Okay, so that, especially in India, you get a lot of spiritual leaders, when they talk from the heart, everyone is more motivated, everyone is woken up, everyone really opens and listens, versus if someone just comes and just talks, you can feel it, the guy has no energy, or he's just speaking for the sake of speaking. So those things everyone can feel. So that is the non-verbal cues that you get, signals that you get from the speaker when the speaker is speaking. So that plays a very, very important part for a speaker, especially you have to create very good positive, that is, gestures. One important gesture when you're communicating, like say I'm communicating with you all, since I'm on a virtual call, I can't see your eyes, but if I'm on a face-to-face discussion, or if I'm on a, let's say, a face-to-face speech, if I'm giving to you all, I should maintain eye contact. Now, I should maintain eye contact with the audience. So when I do that, the audience is not distracted. The eye contact is a very powerful thing. It's like a magnet. When you look at a person's eyes, eye to eye, they will be like, hypnotized within those seconds. They will look at your eyes as well. They will listen to you. So the maintaining eye contact is very important in verbal communication. Okay, it's a very important skill. Most people are afraid to maintain eye contact due to, various cultural factors or various personality issues. But if you take all the successful people, if you take all the successful, CEOs, sports people, doctors, all of them, when you talk to them, they look into your eye and talk. Okay, so it's very direct. So eye contact is very powerful. You don't look at the ground, or you don't look up and talk. Most people, when they're talking, they look this side, that side, up, down. So they're not looking into the eye. So the receiver, when you don't look into the eye and talk, they feel that the message is not for them. So they will not listen. So the active listening in the receiver's end is actually created by the speaker. Now, people say you have to actively listen, but you would have seen this, right? Now, you would have learned among a lot of teachers and lecturers right from your schooling age. But only a few lecturers and teachers would have actually made you listen and understand a subject. The reason being, because they made the eye contact, we'd say they have controlled, or they have mesmerize the audience or hypnotize the audience in that moment, and they pass that knowledge. And those are the teachers and lecturers the students look up with most times. But some people still do not develop their skill. They're still trying to, but that's the difference. A good example which I can give. So a speaker should have the skill to retain the experience of the audience and the receiver. Okay, first that's for the speaker. That's a speaker's skill, to create active listening environment within the audience. Okay, it's very important. And when you're communicating, it's always good to use visuals. Okay, so especially if you're doing a PowerPoint presentation for your university degree or master's degree dissertations, or if you're doing a presentation for your job interview, or if you're doing a presentation in your job itself, can be a sales presentation or even a management meeting presentation. So those presentation skills are done with visuals, where you show infographic. I'm sure most of you all would have heard about infographics, where you have an image and a small content next to that image, and you show the crowd that image and what that image means. And most of the time, you don't just show infographic and allow the audience to look at that infographic. You explain as a speaker, as a presenter. You have to do the explanation. So the infographic is just a guideline. I mean, it's just to people just see a visual and to lock their mind, just to absorb the attention of the audience. Use a visual. So you don't allow the visual to give the message. As a speaker, you should give the message, because different visuals can give different messages to different people. So it's not the same thing what I understand by looking at image versus what you would understand looking at image. So that's very, very important, and how to use visuals to communicate a message. Okay, even like, for example, even if you're writing articles, or even for magazines and newspapers, a good photograph is always important. If you take a newspaper, you'll always see an article with an image, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. The reason is the first thing a person gets attracted to, or first thing the mind, what the mind catches is a visual, is an image. And the image is very attractive, or I wouldn't say the use of attractive. If the image creates a bit of a suspense within that person to learn more, then he starts reading. So at most times the image is very lame and has no punch to it. The reader will skip that entire section even if the content is good. Okay, so using a good visual to support your content is always important, because as human beings, we tend to respond to visuals better or more than just written content. Okay, so that's the very reason YouTube, Instagram, all of those, even social media channels do very well, because it's all about visuals. You're watching videos, pictures, versus just reading articles of the web. So visuals have proven to play a big part. And as a receiver in the communication process, for example, even I would like to have a Q&A session after the discussion, but I don't know, since the audience is in the crowd, how they would be able to ask me questions. But when a speaker gives a speech, or a discussion, or lecturer gives a lecture, you always have to give feedback. When I talk about feedback, it has to be some questions, anything. I mean, there's no right or wrong question, or there's no smart or a stupid question. A question is a question where your mind has a doubt, and you want to clarify that. So questions are always welcome, and never be afraid to ask a question to a person who is giving you information. Because if you don't ask questions, there are two assumptions. One is the speaker thinks that you understood everything, or or you're afraid to ask questions, so the speaker assumes that probably you're interested in the speech or the information that person has given. So it should be always a two-way process, a communication process. It doesn't matter in whatever situation. It can be your family life, it can be your parents, your friends, school, job, everywhere. A communication is effective only if it's two-way. If it's a one-way, then that's not actually a complete cycle of a communication process. Okay, so always remember to make communication two ways. For example, if you take especially people from United States, Australia, UK, they always make sure the communication is two-way. They always welcome you hi, and then when you give some information or even something, if you some sort of information if you give them based on what they're asking you, they always thank you and they welcome you with all verbal cues, right? So that's to make sure that we have understood, that the receivers understood that what they're asking, and they also have clearly understood the message. So those type of gestures and verbal greetings are very important in a communication process to make sure that that process goes through that complete cycle. Okay, so that is very important thing you need to take into mind. And another more very important point is, in a communication process, you need to tailor your message. If you're having a communication, just a ad hoc, just meet a person or a business friend or even just a friend, you openly just talk. You don't plan what you want to say. It just comes out, right? So it's instinctive, so that we can't stop. But in the academic or in the professional field, you're working somewhere and when you're studying, or let's say doing your presentation for your academic research and all of that, so you need to tailor your message properly. You need to draft it, you need to proofread it, and you can cross-check with someone else, your friends, if that message which you're given is helpful or not. So all of that is very important, because especially in the professional business communication, if you get your communication wrong on the first try, you can lose that business. If you're, especially let's say if you're doing sales, if you give the wrong message to a customer in a sales pitch, or if a customer calls you and asks for some information, and if you look, if you're silent and if you can't answer that question, that deal does not take place. It's closed then and there. It's a failure. So in the business environment, you should always have pre-made, tailored messages. Probably write it down. You should learn it, especially if you're working with a product or a service. You should always have answers, best possible answers for queries which you can receive from your own management, your own bosses, and your customers. Now, it's not just the customers. If the boss asks you a question and if you don't know, then again, that's going to really affect your career growth in any organization. So if you don't know, you should always say, let me check on that and get back to you. And make sure you check on that and get back to that person. Get the contact details. If it's your boss, of course, you know the details, the customer. Make sure you have if you don't have his details, get the contact details, and make sure you always get back with the best possible answer. But then that builds a very solid, sound, credible business relationship with your stakeholders. That is, your customers and your own employees within. Now, let me touch on this communication between staff members. That is, if you're working in a company, like most people just go with the intention of thinking that, when they join a company and work, you're only working for yourself and everyone is a competitor. And unfortunately, in South Asia, even in Sri Lanka, I have worked in a few companies before I started my business, and that is unfortunately has been the situation where one staff member sees another staff member as a competitor rather than a team member. So when that happens, there's a lot of communication issues and a lot of behavioral misunderstandings within the company culture. So most companies, especially if you take the multinational companies, American and European companies, they try to create a very positive communication within the workplace. So the staff behave like a team and they're open to one another rather than seeing themselves to be competitors to one another. So it's very, very important that when you're working for a company, doesn't matter which company it is, you should develop a friendly personality, and you should be open to receiving feedback and giving your opinions. Okay, rather than seeing your own staff your own colleagues as just competition and just working to get a promotion or a salary hike. By the end of the day, office politics, you would have heard about it. That really destroys even the best of talents' careers. People join companies with big dreams, but due to internal organizational politics, all this happens due to miscommunication, nothing else. And people who are not being trained properly to understand the real reason why they join a company, not to see everyone as a competitor, but to work as a team. So people are not given that prior knowledge. So people tend to think they have to work for themselves only, and they have to satisfy a boss, and then they'll be okay. So that's the intention people join companies with. That's not their fault, because they're not being taught or trained properly on how to work as a team and move as a team with a company. So most companies take that effort to build a team culture. So for you to succeed, for you to have an upper hand, always remember to develop a positive attitude within you, and have a two-way communication. And if you get your communication right when you're joining a company, even in the first 2 months, you will shine. Basically, tell me, believe me, you will really stand out among the people who are timid, who don't communicate, who are not very open to feedback, all of that. So always remember to polish yourselves up before joining a company. Though it's not just your degrees or master's certifications, your communication carries a long way, because once you have your communication right, then automatically your progression in your workplace or even your own business you want to do, you will do very well. So there are communication to develop your communication skills. There are, you can join. You have heard about Toastmasters. I'm sure India is Toastmasters is very big. When I developed my skills by joining a Toastmasters club in Sri Lanka. I'm still part of them, so that really helps you in developing communication skills, because you have been trained to do speeches to your Toastmaster team members and on different levels and skills. So you can really develop your communication skills. So since you're university students, look for the Toastmasters club close in your area. Definitely you'll find you can talk to people. I'm sure your teachers would be able to help you, because if you want to improve your English, if you want to communicate in very smoothly and very professionally, joining a Toastmasters club in your area would give you a big boost in your personal life and your career when it comes to getting your communication right. So that is one thing. And to improve your English, one good method, like what I did was, of course, you should watch, if you're not talking in English with your family or friends, like, since that's not our native language, most of us don't, we use our mother tongue. If you're in Tamil Nadu, you are talking Tamil. Even I talk in Tamil at home with my wife, kids, and parents, all of that. So English, mostly with my customers only I'm talking, but since I'm talking to the customers daily, I'm using the English language very frequently. So I do not forget the vocabulary. But if you are not, especially in India, especially India, if you take Tamil Nadu or even the North Indians, since their own mother tongue is within the community, they tend to talk in the local language, even with the business partners and all of that. So, and English is only talked, only is required. So in that case, what happens is your English is now polished. I mean, you forget your vocabulary, your pronunciations, and what you should say, and all of that becomes an issue. Okay, so best method to learn English is speak in English at home. If you have brothers and sisters, speak with them in English. Even if you have a pet, a dog or a cat, you can speak to that also in English, no problem. They'll understand, they'll respond. And one important skill which you need to develop is, speaking in English, think in English and speak in English. For example, you're speaking Tamil, you think in Tamil and speak in Tamil. Do not think in Tamil and speak in English, because then that's where you get stuck with vocabulary and sentence formations, all of that. So always think the language that you're going to speak and speak in that language. So you think in English and you speak in English. That is very, very important. Then for another useful skill to improve your English is watch some good English movies. where there are a lot of English communication. There are a lot of English movies you can look for, which has a lot of communication. Then you can follow that and learn that from those English movies as well. Always watch daily if you can, at least allocate 15 minutes to watch BBC or CNN or those foreign English channels. You can learn a lot of English by watching, listening to those foreign news channels, because they use very good English when they're communicating, when they're giving a message. So I learned a lot from watching news channels. So always, watch BBC or CNN or any international. Of course, watch your local news channels as well, obviously English, but international English channels, have a higher standard of English when they speak. So always watch that as well. And always do have a dictionary at home. Even though all of us are online and we go and search for meanings of word on Google, always a physical dictionary, advanced learners dictionary. There's something called advanced learners dictionary, Oxford advanced learners dictionary, and learn at least 3 to 5 words which you don't know. Just take the dictionary, open it up, and just have a pencil or a pen, and just one word for learning, mark that word and learn that word and the meaning of that word daily. Just keep learning, because once you do that, you're feeding your mind with new vocabulary daily. If you can learn 3 words a day, then for a month you're looking at about 90 words. So that's good. So once you're speaking and involved in English communication, you will tend to your mind will tend to recall those words which you have learned. Okay, so I did that, and it really worked well for me, because when I left school, my English was not that good. I knew the language, but I was not able to speak fluently like I'm speaking now. So I use these small methods to improve my vocabulary, and Toastmasters Club, a lot of practice, and all of that has brought about smooth communication in me. So still improving. So nobody's perfect. There's no perfect speaker in the world. But with practice, you can perfect your skills to a certain extent. Okay. Then we looked at non-verbal communication, active listening. So let me just elaborate a bit more on active listening, because active listening, like I told you earlier, speaker plays a big part, but as a listener, as a receiver, you need to develop your levels of concentration to listen to a person. So, but at most times, active listening is a psychological, instinctive thing. For example, if you hear a song which you like, you will listen to it. But if your friend plays a song which you're not very much have a liking to, you just ignore it. You're not listening to it. Similarly, any speech, any lecture, anything that happens, you would only listen to what you like. That's the human nature. But for you to become successful in academic and your working in your personal life, you need to listen to nearly all conversations. Okay, like when somebody directs a conversation at you, you should train your mind to listen to it actively. Even you might not agree with it, you might have a different point of view to the message given, but you should pay attention to the words, to the voice that person is giving the message. You should listen. That's also science. Some people from a young age, they have the ability to listen better than another. They have developed, the brain is develops faster than the other. Some people it takes time, but always if you're consciously training yourself and consciously telling yourself to listen, yes, then the mind will not get distracted. It will listen. So always make it a point that you actively listen. So that plays a very, very big part in your communication, not just career, in your entire life. Okay, so these are the basic strategies which I have covered, basic stuff which you need to know in working environment. But there are a few other points also which you would like to give offhand as to how you can further improve your communication skills. Now, certain people think that the voice you have plays a big part in your communication. That is true, but all of us can't have beautiful voices. You see, so every voice is unique to each person. Okay, but see, if you can speak out loud and if your voice is heard, then that's enough. So some people, it's an inferiority complex. They feel their voice is too rough or too sweet, or they feel they're not confident to express their voice. That's the biggest problem in normal communication, because somebody has told them at home or in their family circle that person has voice here, that person has a, let's say, ugly voice or not attractive voice, and psychologically that person develops a inferiority complex, believing that he should not talk a lot because that he or she does not have a attractive voice. Well, that's not true, because everyone's voice is unique, and you don't just, and voice is given to you. Okay, you have a voice to give a message. That voice being beautiful, ugly has no meaning at all, unless you are going to professional singing, or if you're into a profession where they pay you to have a good voice, a radio jockey or whatever. Other than that, any type of voice you have is more than enough for your working career and your academic life and your personal life. So always value what you have. That's very, very important, because in our communities, mostly in our South Asian communities, we tend to compare ourselves with others, and we tend to come to conclusions and assumptions that being like this, or being like that, or having a voice like this, or being able to speak like this is the correct way, and doing it another way is wrong. So those are only our own assumptions created by social norms or social pressures. But in reality, that's not the case. In reality, all of us as human beings, we have the right to express ourselves with what we have received or what we are born with. Our voice, our looks, how we see the world, all what we are born with. So we should value that. Not try to just copy others, or try to feel we're not good as the others. Everyone is good in their own way. Just self-belief takes you a long way. So communication, self-belief plays a very, very important part, because if you don't believe in yourself and if you don't value yourself, then everything collapses. You take all the top speakers, even can be politicians, can be spiritual leaders, business leaders, all of them believe in themselves. They believe in what they say, and they value themselves. They don't judge themselves by how others see them. They judge themselves by how they carry themselves. Basically, that's the way I put it. They love themselves. That's a simple word I would like to use. So always value yourself, love yourself, because once you do that, automatically the world you see outside you, and the people who tend to come in touch with you, contact with you, everything will be changed. Everything will be different. You transform into a more of a self-loving and more of a calm and a more self-centered person. So you know clearly what your goals are, you know clearly what your objectives are, and you can always work towards achieving those goals. Because this goal setting, especially since you're academic students, let me touch a bit on goals as well, because communication plays a big part in a person being able to set his personal goals in his life. The personal goals can be in his personal life and his academic and the working life. Okay, so always set goals and use your communication skills to plan out those goals. That is, write your goals down, keep it in a book separately, review your goals every 6 months and see if you achieved it or what is lacking in you to achieve it. So all that plays a very, very important part in career progression, because nobody's going to just come out and hand over opportunities. So much of competition out there, every in society, everyone is trying to get a piece of the pie. So nobody's going to come and hand over anything. So only if you plan and have proper goals, then you can interact effectively with the community which you're trying to move with. So always keep that in mind. So don't live life without goals. Have your goals set, and don't just aim for the stars and the moon and the sky. Have practical goals set, and which you can achieve. Then definitely your actions will be directed towards achieving those goals. Okay, so that's it from me. Then I will share my, I don't know, because in the chat bottom I will share my YouTube. I have 2 YouTube channels. One is, again, I'm sharing a lot of information like this, and I have done similar seminars in the past for other Indian universities also. Those was recorded. So I have one in Tamil, one channel, another channel in English. Okay, so I will mention that here. I don't know, since you are in the auditorium, I don't know how you will receive that, but I will just mention those channel links here. So you can always, subscribe to my YouTube channels, and check out my website as well. And so you'll be up to date with whatever information I'm putting out. Okay. Thank you. If you have any questions, you can ask me. I don't know if someone has a mic there. I'll be more than happy to answer. Anyone has questions?
So how to build a communication?
Sorry, how to?
How to build a communication?
Okay, now how to build a communication. Now, if you look at the theoretical aspects, like I told you the initial conversation, when you say build a conversation with a new person, right? That is, let's say if you're going to meet someone, let's say a business related meeting, and the first time you're going in, always have a good greeting message. So the greeting message will always give the best first impression, and of course the way you're dressed also carries a long way, and facial expressions. So always have a smile in your face, not a big smile, a normal smile, and have a good positive greeting. So that will get the attention of the audience. Okay, the first is the greeting, and you should introduce yourself as well. The introduction does not have to be very long. You don't have to start praising yourself with introduction. Have a short and a sweet introduction which gives the message, they know, so the audience knows who you are, basically what background you're coming from. Have a quick introduction, and it's all about how you greet the audience, and with a smile, and you show that you're a very open person to receive any question, and willing to give a solution. So that's how you build up a conversation.
So
Yes.
list of modern technology that supports communication.
Okay. So anyway, that was we discussed initially. So a lot of modern technologies. Okay, it's like currently we're using one. So the most known one is Zoom. Especially after the pandemic, Zoom has really taken off. And Google also had their own Google Meet. So I'm currently this meeting, what I'm having with you is through Google Meet. Microsoft also has their own team meeting application. Then you have Skype, of course, then WhatsApp. Those are the software applications. Then if you go to the, of course, use those software applications, you would have the hardware as well. So then you need a proper, a web camera with a mic. You need a sound internet connection. So those are the basic tools you need to start a virtual communication. Okay, those are the tools. But when you're one-to-one, if you're if you're talking to audience one-to-one, and there's a large audience, of course you need a good mic, good speakers. Of course, I'm sure you're having a good speaker there. So whatever I'm speaking now, I'm sure that large audience is able to listen. So that's also a tool you're using. So it's not just one tool. There are a lot of tools. So definitely you can actually Google and get a full list of those tools. So it varies from the type and the nature of the meeting. Certain high-tech meetings will have a lot of high-tech devices. So simple meetings like what we are having now, so whatever tools I mentioned are more than sufficient. Yes, any other questions?
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
What are the obstacles of communication?
Yes. So main obstacle is, like I said, noise. So when you said noise, that noise can be external noise coming from the outside environment. It can be even birds. It can be, the vehicles on the road. It can be your own ceiling fan. It can be anything, right? Background noise, TV, radio. So that's a normal standard background noise and disturbance which we come across in a one-to-one communication. Then the technological disturbance is bad internet connection. Camera quality is not good, then again the visuals are not good, then that also is a disturbance. And the voice, whatever I'm speaking now, the speaker which gives out their voice to the audience, that also needs to be good. So to have the two-way process, so virtual, online and offline, so these are the main distractions we come across. Yes.
Sir, is there a way we can measure or access effective communication?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Is there a way we can measure or access effective communication?
Yeah, we can measure. When you say measure, it's more of a it's a two-way thing, right? Like for example, measuring, like we said, for example, I'm having the discussion with you, right? So the voice clarity. Okay, so the voice clarity, if you can hear me speak clearly my voice and I can hear you speak clearly to me, then I give the rating. For example, after this call, Google asks me, that's an automatic review. I'll get a pop-up asking how was the video quality, how was the call. So it's up to me to give it a 1-star rating or a 5-star rating. So it's a measure, it's a physical thing, it's a human judgment, right? So it's a human judgment. So I'm all okay with this call. I will give it a 5-star rating. But another person, if he feels the message, the volume is not clear, the video is not good enough, he might give it a 3-star rating. So the measuring is a human thing. I mean, it's a human decision. It's not automated decision. Even if you automate it, the decision is not accurate. It's an opinion. Your own opinion gives the measurement of the communication process. Yes.
What are the greatest challenge for good communication, sir?
Okay. The greatest challenge is, like I said, self-confidence is very important. Like if you're not self-confident, you cannot speak. And you should not be afraid to talk to an audience. So most people, when they come in front of audience, they start sweating. I mean, they have a lot of fear. That's a very interesting story I can tell you. Actual research where if you take, you would have heard a lot of people committing suicides. So actual research says that a person is more afraid to speak to an audience, let's say of 50 people, versus actually going and committing suicide. So a person is more comfortable killing himself or herself than actually going and talking to an audience of 50 to 100. So much of fear people face in coming in front of an audience. So that fear, only way you can overcome is practice. So on your first 2-3 attempts, you'll fail most probably, but with practice and you'll get comfortable with facing an audience. Then with that comfort, then you can remove that barrier. That is the greatest barrier, according to me, is the fear of facing an audience.
Sir, give us some suggestion to improve our listening skills.
Okay, I gave a few suggestions. I can give you more. One important suggestion is you should practice concentration. Now, the thing is this: people will tell you just listen, but just because I tell you to listen, you will not listen because you don't know how to listen. So first you have to learn how to listen. One method, 2-3 methods which you can try. One is most people, if you see, who listen to music, let's say with the earphone. Now if you have an earphone and if you're on the phone or whatever, you're playing music and listening to it, let's say at least 15-20 minutes a day, we're using ear headsets and listening to music, watching YouTube channels, those people tend to be more effective listeners than a person who does not actually listen. Because because you're training your mind through the ears to hear sounds through listening. So don't overdo it, because then again it can damage your eardrums using earphones. It's not advisable, but using a headset or even without a headset, if you listen to most people do watch videos, right, on YouTube and all of that. So if you're listening daily to content, to information, you become an effective listener. Okay, that's one method. Other method is you can practice concentration. Concentration, there are various methods. You can light a lamp or a candle and stare at the flame. That also develops your concentration. If you are into religion and spirituality, you can chant whatever name of God you wish. That also develops your concentration. So that also, developing your mental concentration improves your active listening. Yes, next question. Any more questions?
Thank you, sir.
Yes. So if you can get the links to my YouTube channels, Tamil Digital and Trending Digital, I shared on the message. I'll share it with the organizer. Then you can subscribe to it, and a lot of interesting videos I put out